I think for me it was Haason Reddick because over his time, like you saw him getting closer. Like after the first 2 weeks, you're saying like, okay, you're waiting for the sacks to come. You're waiting to see him get those hits and be that guy that they signed in the offseason. And to see the performance that he put together yesterday, I mean, getting the strip sacks, getting consistent pressure on Trevor Lawrence.
Appreciate you streaming on in here on Birds 365. McMullen and McDonald here to talk about the 4-0 Philadelphia Eagles. And to lend a helping hand from NJ.com is day after Chris Franklin. Day after another victory, Chris Franklin. Was it ever in doubt in your mind? You're sitting there yesterday next to McMullen, or on the complete opposite side of the press box if you're smart. And they're down 14-0 before you could blink.
Chris has got enough room.
Yeah. Did you utter the phrase "uh-oh" at any time yesterday?
I'll be completely honest. I actually started writing my "Who's to blame" for the loss after it's 14-0 head start. Yeah. I really thought I started like 14-0, and this offense couldn't get going, and defense going. Yeah, this might as well get started. But yeah, thankfully I had to tear it up. For Eagles' sake, I had to tear it up and go for something different.
Yeah, that 4th and 3, Chris, at the Eagles 34, when Trevor Lawrence unforced error, really just flushing out. That was to me the turning point of the game. They were teetering on the brink. And Nick kind of talked about it after the game. You never plan, say, hey, we want to get down 14-0 based on adversity, but it's nice when you face that adversity and are able to recover and come back. It was pretty impressive. I mean, that was a good team coming in here. I think the weather helped. Lawrence didn't handle it well. But what was your most impressive part? The running game, the ability to take the football away? What stood out to you most?
I think for me it was Haason Reddick because over his time, like you saw him getting closer. Like after the first 2 weeks, you're saying like, okay, you're waiting for the sacks to come. You're waiting to see him get those hits and be that guy that they signed in the offseason. And to see the performance that he put together yesterday, I mean, getting the strip sacks, getting consistent pressure on Trevor Lawrence, and basically impacting the game. And I look at that and I'm sitting there thinking like, okay, you know what? You have him going now. You got the interior defensive line of Fletcher Cox, Javon Hargrave, and Jordan Davis. Now all of a sudden he's getting pressed now. He's opening up opportunities for everybody else, and it could really spur this defense.
I thought something that was impressive, Chris, and feel free if I'm overstating it to shoot me down. I think the Eagles have one of the best 3-man corner groups in the National Football League. I'll comp them with anyone when you add in the slot corner position. They're down 2 out of their 3 guys before you could blink yesterday. Maddox doesn't even play. Slay is done early. So you're really testing your depth by going there. I thought they held up just fine. Yeah, I know Lawrence made a couple of plays early on, but then they reel off as many unanswered points as they did. That's the defense getting its job done. Certainly up front with getting pressure on the quarterback, but the Bradbury interception, the overall coverage, I thought the Eagles secondary having to deal with the adversity they did was as impressive as any group in the Eagles locker room yesterday.
And when you look at the guys who came up big at times, there are guys there were questions about. I mean, you look at Marcus Epps, the way he was getting some pass defending play in tight coverage. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson looks like he's starting to get a little bit better when it comes to getting acclimated to the system, and he's starting to – you see the calls are being made. He's playing a lot of snaps now. I think he was tied for like the most snaps as well, too, on the Eagles again. So you see those guys. And then the fact you have Bradbury, the guy that you're starting to wonder – he came from Giants. Everybody knew he was a good corner a couple of years ago, but you don't know, like, okay, like, is there – the Giants, I know the Giants have cap issues, but why aren't they letting this guy go? And I thought it was funny yesterday. We were standing around his locker, and you hear Darius Slade. We were talking, asked questions. He goes, "You guys are asking the wrong questions." And I was like, "What's the question?" How the Giants let this guy go? Let this guy go. You're sitting there looking like he's got the good anticipation. He plays well on his own. And then Devonta Maddox is almost like the forgotten guy in that when you look at that trio but he was playing well. I think he was PFF before last week had him as the 10th, I think it's 10th, 8th or 10th highest graded cornerback in the league in coverage. So you look at this trio, it's like Bobby Taylor, Vincent, and Al Harris all over again in a way.
Yeah, it has been an impressive group, and James really baited Trevor Lawrence on that interception. I mean, he really showed that veteran savvy there. Um, I do want to talk about the injuries, though. The one thing, I mean, they got pretty banged up, and it started with Slay 3 plays in. Now he seemed, as you mentioned, his gregarious self after the game. I don't think it's too serious because he was certainly not acting like somebody's going to miss significant time. Jordan Mailata was still trying to get back out there in the third quarter, but we'll have to see. Isaac Sayamalo left late. Um, that's a concern, obviously, coming off of last year. Um, any concern overall about these issues? The Eagles were able to overcome, as Jody mentioned. You talk about Avonte Maddox and Jack Driscoll playing left tackle, but I think the weather helped there, to be honest, because if that was pristine conditions, I think it changes, maybe the complexion of the game a little bit. So you give Josiah Scott credit, Jack Driscoll credit, but I don't know. I don't know if I'd be comfortable in a pristine like Arizona this week with Josiah Scott against that offense. I don't know.
I I think it might be hopefully. See, I think if I had to guess and speculate, I think you may have Maddox back. You may, and it's going to be probably up to game time. So if you don't, I think yesterday definitely the rain definitely helps, especially when you're offense. You know where you're going, and
Yeah.
defense like you got defense has to go and readjust. So I think that helped out a lot. I'm really concerned about Mailata, especially just with a shoulder like that for a guy who has to continually push out his hands and get a block and take all that impact on that. And I'm really now all of a sudden now you're starting to look at see how well Dillard is progressing now because you may have to lean on him eventually if it's a long term thing and reactivate him off the IR. So I'm looking at and then the other one, Jake Elliott. You wonder how
Yeah.
serious that is because I mean, granted, he missed the extra point when it was winning in those conditions, but overall he's a really reliable kicker. And we see how important kicking is in this league. So I'm fairly concerned. It's going to be a long injury list on Wednesday.
How much do you think the Elliott injury factored into Sirianni's decision to go for it after he had missed the PAT and after he had taken the hit? He did put him back out there to kick another field goal after he took points off the board. So he showed confidence, but then the decision later, I said, does the way he's viewing his kicker right now have to do with this decision to go for it on fourth down, which didn't work? How much do you think Sirianni factored that into that call?
I wouldn't be surprised if it was in the back of his mind because it could have been one of those things where you get the hit and you're feeling it's like, oh, okay, I'm fine, I'm fine. Then it was that cold and rainy weather started setting. It's like maybe I can't get the lift off the ground when it comes to that too. So I wouldn't be surprised if that had something to do with it. And I think he had some faith in his offense. I mean, they were still running the ball pretty effectively too, and he wanted to go ahead and have confidence in that. And I mean, look, I thought after he got roughed, and I was like, all right, cool. Maybe this is probably the way to get that touchdown. And then they get a touchdown after that, but they had to settle a field goal. And the way he gutted that out, I gotta give credit. I mean, kickers get the rap. Some of them aren't the most toughest guys when you see it, but now you got a tackler and Sipas, and now you got Elliott, gutting that thing out. I think the Eagles are all right, at least in the toughness aspect of it.
Yeah, that was a strange decision, though. And Chris and Nick really didn't want to talk about it after the game. I mean, if they kick it, and it's pretty easy field goal at that point,
Yeah.
game's over. And they give it back to Jacksonville down 8 points, so it's a one possession game. And you're saying, and here comes Haason Reddick. 10 seconds later, it's essentially a walk off win. But that one was a little bit strange. Did these teams, because if you think about Doug Peterson, he was at the forefront of this new age of aggressiveness, and he did it again, as I mentioned, at 4th and 3 when it was 14-0, and it blew up on him. Now, it didn't blow up on Nick Sirianni. Do these teams get too over aggressive? Certainly Brandon Staley does, but do you think Nick Sirianni's getting to the point where, all right, look at the game situation. Take the win. Take the 2 possessions. Why? What is the positive? Even if you what's I guess confidence. What's the positive of going for that?
Well, I think a lot of it had to do with the weather. 'Cause I think he's still very conservative. I really think he's one of those guys that wants to not put his offense in a bad position. Because offensive guy, because basically when it comes to the whole ebb and flow of the whole field position thing, I think the weather definitely played a role in that. And I think he was like, you know what, in certain aspects, I want to get. In. I think early on, especially that first one from his own 30, I think he just wanted. He had confidence in his lines, like I just want to get things going.
Yeah, that was
I
Brandon
don't
Staley. Like, yeah,
yeah,
that from his own 30. Woo.
yeah.
I
And I'm
I
sitting
that's
feeling
the
like
first time we talked about that. Yeah, that was gutsy.
yeah,
Not
but I'm
as
saying like
gutsy when you have Jalen Hurts, but gutsy.
I same thing. Like, what is he doing? But then it's like, all right, you look like looking back a day later. I'm like, all right, it wasn't that the line was okay. You figured you had an advantage there, but I didn't think I'd ever see the day that Nick Sirianni would go from his own 30, and it's not the fourth quarter. Like it is, he's still conservative. But I think it was more about the situation, the weather, and everything else like that.
Another good sign, Mr. Franklin, is we've had you on for 15 minutes. We had Jeff Mosher on earlier for a solid half hour. I think Jalen Hurts was mentioned in passing maybe once. The NFL has become such a quarterback league. It's all a quarterback, the quarterback, the quarterback. Well, the quarterback's been very good for the first 3 weeks here in Philadelphia. He wasn't great yesterday, but he throws the early pick six, and things could have gone sideways for him in the offense. And his narrow focus and his ability to stay in the moment, I think, was a major contributor yesterday. Even if he just handed the ball off to Miles and they're opening up huge lines in front of him, he's still the guy that ran the ship. And I think he showed you a little something yesterday by not allowing the team to continue to slide after the bad start on the pick six.
Yeah, and for most of the season, when you look at Jalen Hurts, and I'm looking at his decision making and his ability, just like that pull that trigger when he saw something to go with it, he's been able to do it. And then I saw that he double clutched. If he threw it when he initially wanted to, I still wouldn't throw it that close with double coverage over that side. But if he threw it where he had to, he had a better chance of either completing or being bad down instead of double pumping. And next thing you know, he's trying to become a linebacker, which you don't want to see him do that. But overall, I thought when you look at the way he's stuck with it, that's the one thing when you look at his demeanor, he seems like he's on phase. You can tell him, hey, your house on fire. All right, where's the water? Call the fire department. We'll be good. So he was able to just continue to do
Yeah.
that over and over again. And I think it's one of the things that I think the offense kind of felt about. I thought it was pretty telling. I think it was, I don't know if it was him. I think it may have been him, but it says like we didn't have to say anything. We know it was understood and just go from there. And that's an element you want to see from a guy, especially with the way this team is trending early on, 4-0. It's more often than not they're probably in playoffs. So you want to see a guy in the postseason. You see something goes, them go down early. You want to see a guy that's not phased by the moment and continue to bring them in the right direction.
All right, let's talk game balls. Chris Franklin, because the Eagles had to give out 8 of them. I think Nick said to the offensive line, anytime they get to 200 yards rushing, he's given the offensive line game balls. They deserved it yesterday, man. 14-7 after the Eagles scored. They had that 9-play drive. 8 were runs. 1 was a screen to Dallas Goedert. And Jason Kelce and Isaac Seumalo specifically were just blowing people off the line. And Miles Sanders had a career day. Great day for him. But, man, those were some big holes. And he was reading them correctly. How good is this team's rushing attack? And is it so unique that they should play it up more? In other words, I talked about this with Jody in the first hour. There are very few teams in this league that run the football consistently. A couple, Tennessee, with Derrick Henry. But even that's a little bit different. The Eagles have this because of Jeff Stoutland, his ability to coordinate that running game and scheme it up. They're so unique. Like everybody seems surprised when they see these blocking combinations. In a weird way, do the Eagles not use it enough?
I think they do. I think when you look at what they have now, I think last year I thought they should have used it a lot more early on because I thought they would have done a lot better because I didn't think they had the weapons and able to move the ball down the field effectively through the air. Now, when that you have like your AJ Brown and everybody else is another year in the system, I think now you can start to go like that 60-40 a little bit. But when you look at the way this line has blocking the aggressiveness, and you mentioned Isaac and Kelsey. Kelsey was just going to get into the second
It's
level.
unbelievable.
Like it was crazy. And another guy I really liked on yesterday was Landon Dickerson. That nastiness he was showing. I mean, he was having fun just pushing people around, and you like see that. And to me, the mark of a really good running team is when the defense knows it's 3rd and 3, and you have to stop on 4th and 3, whatever, and you just continue to run them down there. You basically take their heart at that moment.
Yeah.
And you do that. You impose your will on that. That's how you know you got something going on there. And I think when you look at the guys they have there, Stoutland's done a really good job. It seems like it's almost like a plug and play. It seems like you look like Sua, Petta, and okay, he'll be all right that way too.
It is plug and play with the running game. Now, sometimes guys like Sua have issues in pass protection, but with the running game, and Brian Baldinger just put up some of his clips as he always does. He's got Lane Johnson clips on Trayvon Walker, Trayvon Walker is extremely, extremely talented. And that's what everybody looks for, right, Chris, in the NFL. They look for these super athletes. And then all of a sudden, the super athlete gets up, oh, here's Lane Johnson. All right, that's over. That's done. He gets his hands on him. This offensive line, I can't give them enough flowers today. I mean, I'm shutting down the flower shop. It is, especially from the run blocking aspect. It's amazing what this group does, and it all starts with Jeff Stout.
Yeah, and you see the little tweaks they do in and out every week. I mean, you'll see a little like the little fold block where you'll see the pulls that come out of nowhere, and I'm sitting just looking like, all right, if I'm of a defensive line coach for another team, like, okay, most teams you can tell like, okay, here's outside zone. We know this guy's going here and then he's moving up to this way. But there's little wrinkles that they've incorporated along the way, even when it comes down to little splits. You see the little things like, oh, I can tell this way. He's 2 feet. He's actually right. I can tell this is going on inside. Wait. Okay, they changed it up. The little things that Stoutland is incorporating in the running game as a running game coordinator and the way he's got his guys prepared is just really, really good.
Now, I mentioned this earlier, Chris, and our guest, Jeff Mosher, didn't have the answer. I don't have the answer. I'm hoping you have the answer, but if you don't have the answer, I'm not going to give you a hard time about it because I don't know that there's an answer.
No pressure.
The Philadelphia Eagles have scored 82 points in their first 4 games in the second quarter. The most points that any team has ever scored in the second quarter of their first 4 games is 71 by the 1941 Chicago Bears.
Great team, the 41 Bears.
Yeah. Name 2 players, McMullen. I dare you. Yeah, he didn't. I don't know.
Bronco Nagurski.
Yeah.
I'm sure he was, actually.
He might have been. What is A, the reason for it, or B, so you got a multiple choice here. Pick whichever one you think you can make the best story up on. The significance of it or the reason for it. Because it really just does jump out as a stat. I don't know what it means. I don't know why it's happened. You got any thoughts on the Eagles having 82 points in 4 second quarters so far this year?
I don't know what's in their game day smoothies that it seems to wait for 1 quarter and then all of a sudden
the game day smoothies doesn't kick in until the second quarter.
I don't know what I can't put my finger on it. I mean, if anything, it's almost like they almost overcorrect when it comes to their game plan. It's like I think that you look at, let's say, like, oh well, we're going to try to put all these points here. Well, that's not working. All right, go to this, and this, and then like the answers right away. And next thing you know, they're scoring at will. It seems like. So I'm joining Jeff. I'm joining you guys on that one. I wish I knew to pinpoint and say, you know what, Shane's again, and Nick knows what's just going to happen in this quarter, and then it just magically disappears. I don't know if they got some Madden power up where they get the second quarter popping up and it pops up. But it's
cheat code, second quarter cheat code.
Yep. They paid all that money just to get the little things, and they're like, okay, we can coach from here on out.
All right, Chris, we have reached the nitpicking portion of the program. So I got to nitpick. I gotta point out some things. And one thing I want to point out is, again, the Eagles get caught for, this time it was offensive pass interference, taking an A.J. Brown. Now, everyone says, that's not a penalty. That's not a penalty. Well, for the Eagles, it is because A, it's a point of emphasis, and B, they have this reputation, so everybody's looking for it. And in that case, Dallas Goedert should have had his hands down, but he had his hands up, and they're looking for it. And he's a veteran player. He should be more savvy. I give Nick Sirianni credit because he hasn't complained about this. In fact, he said the opposite. He said he thinks the officials are doing a good job with it for the most part. Maybe he's trying to, sweeten them up a little bit.
A good job too to make sure I don't get called as much as
yeah, exactly. So maybe it's not working to date. Is this something that is just baked into the Eagles offense because of all the RPOs and we're going to have to deal with, or is this sort of a teachable thing that they can clean up?
I think it is, but to a little extent. But I think when you look at some of the other opportunities where they could have had pass interference, where we saw it happen a lot last year when they were running those mesh routes where they get the two wide receivers crossing across the field and it looked like somebody was really trying to do an NBA pick, stand there with their arms out and let the other guy go around. I've seen that cleaned up. Yesterday's, I thought, to me, the referee could have had a little bit more situational awareness. If you see a guy being a little bit more aggressive, I was okay. I get that. The fact that just because Dallas went 2 inches and then got inside like that way, didn't physically, in my opinion, didn't forcefully enough to physically impede. And look, the referee was even trying to think do I call it? So you saw him look, he's like, do I? Yeah, okay, I'll just toss it that way too. I don't think that one yesterday was really penalty, but they called it so that way too. But I think overall, we'll see continue to see the illegal man downfield penalties, and I think we'll continue to see the pass interference ones a little bit and also when you have a quarterback that likes to move around and make plays, extend plays, that's going to happen as well too. So I think that won't be the last time we see that penalty call. I think
that old axiom of you can call holding every play in the National Football League on the offensive line. If that was pass interference, then guess what? You can call offensive pass interference on every play in every single game. So I'm with you. I just thought it was a lousy call. If Johnny Mack wants to give the coach credit, maybe the old reverse psychology of, the refs are doing a good job.
Yeah,
to try and get him.
That's what
They're
he's
not
doing.
calling going forward. All right, roll with it, Nick. We'll go with you on this, but I don't have to do that. So I'll say it was a complete and utter bullshit call. All right. What scares you next week about the Arizona Cardinals? Kyler Murray or Zach Ertz?
I say C is where they're actually playing, because the fact they've lost the last 5 trips they've gone out there for some reason, even when the Eagles have had better teams, the fact they have whatever they've gone out when they've gone to the desert, they haven't had success at all. But for me, I think overall, if I had to choose between those two, I think Kyler Murray, because I think this team's gotten a lot better when it comes to covering the tight ends. I think Kaiser White, I think TJ Edwards.
Hold on, let me interrupt. You think it's their ability to cover the tight end, or that they haven't played a really good tight end in the first 4 weeks?
I think it's their ability to cover tight end. I think Hawkinson's having a down year. I know that.
Hawkinson went nuts yesterday. Yeah. He's a good player, TJ Hawkinson.
He's limited. Yeah, I really think he's still one of the definitely top 10. I still think maybe top 5 because the tight end position is down this year. I don't know what's going on, but yeah, I think he's really good. So I think they've done a good job when whatever tight ends in front of them, whether it's Hawkinson, Logan Thomas, what have you, I think they've done a good job when it comes to that. And because I think when they look at the personnel, Kaiser White, TJ Edwards, and Marcus Epps, I like those 3 when it comes to tight end. So I think they can cover Ertz still. Ertz is going to get his targets because who else is going to really throw it to, in my opinion, because he's your best target on there. But it's Murray when he comes to his improvisational skills. It's his ability to when he's on, he can fit that ball into tight windows, especially try some shots downfield. And if the Eagles, if in case Maddox is not back and you have Josiah Scott, you can be sure that the Cardinals are in Cliff Kingsbury are going to start trying to basically try to ISO him up and single him up as well too. So I think Murray's the bigger threat to me.
All right, I'm going to leave you with a tough one, Chris. At C. Franklin News, make sure you read Chris at NJ.com. Here, because he just got his new contract, and Jalen Hurts is playing the way he's playing, and we all know what's coming after this season. Who's a better player, Kyler Murray or Jalen Hurts?
I think right now is Jalen Hurts, because, part of it, Murray's not reaching his full potential because he doesn't have DeAndre Hopkins. But when I look at the overall factor, I think talent. I think Murray has a little bit slight better arm talent than Hurts, but it's not that much. I think Hurts has actually developed himself. That I think Hurts makes better decisions now when to run, when not to run. But then when you look at the actual who's a better person for the team and the fit in the locker room, if you put Kyler Murray, I think in that situation yesterday here in Philly when they're down 14-0, I'm not sure that team's coming back at all. When you look at Jalen Hurts, I think he's that good of a player. But overall, if the way he's playing right now, the way in their overall, I think Hurts is right now. It's not. It's very, very close though. Very.
By the way, Chris, I agree with you. And 5 years, 230.5 million, 160 million guaranteed.
Why couldn't you work, man? Oh, man, should go to work.
That's where you begin the Jalen Hurts contract extension conversation and just go up from there. All right, so I'm going to put you both to it right now. Zach Ertz, 4 games, 181 yards. That's 45 yards a game. You take an under or over 45 yards for Zach Ertz next week against Eagles. You got to go under, Franklin, after you said the Eagles shut down other teams' tight ends.
No, I'll go over, but it'll be 55 or 56. That's about it when it comes.
Well, then how good are they at shutting down tight ends? They're going to let Zach Ertz get more than what he's averaging.
I'm going to go over because you know how these teams, they try to get their old, players against their old. Cliff Kingsbury's going to draw something up on the cocktail napkin because he doesn't game
but they're
plan.
going to be able to shut it down. Chris said they're playing great against opposing teams' tight ends.
Well, they're playing better. They're
He's
better, but it's like every time because of the presence of Jalen Hurts, like I got asked about Jacksonville's run defense, and I said 55. I mean, they're going way over that. Jalen didn't even have a big game running, but typically with Jalen Hurts, it's like he might get 55 himself. He might run off a couple, and it didn't happen. They were able to get it in a more traditional way, but they're gonna work Zach Ertz in the game. I'm with you, Chris. He's gonna be at 60, 70. That's not necessarily a bad thing. Kaiser might still be doing a good job, but they're going to try to get him involved. I agree with
screens
Chris.
And everything else. You're seeing like, okay, here we go, and maybe some garbage yards too when I think the Eagles win, but I think it might be some garbage
time. Franklin's going garbage time. We haven't even gotten to Tuesday. I like it. Chris, good stuff. Thank you much for jumping in. We'll get you up again next week.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Chris.
Have a good one now. Thanks. See you.
Chris Franklin.